To be able to assess risk in a changing climate, you need to have access to three types of information. Hazard information, how assets and people are exposed to that hazard, and vulnerability of assets and people to those hazards. Now, when you add the complexity of climate change to that, then you need to be able to know how climate change is changing the patterns of these hazards, their severity, their frequency, how the location of these hazards may be changing. But beyond that, the development patterns in today's economy, where governments and people are building their homes, how the assets, center of manufacturing are focusing in high-risk areas, all of that interplay into this complexity of understanding what the risks are. So with that said, if you go back to late 1980s and early 1990s, a chain of major events, hurricanes and storms, led to insolvency in the insurance industry. And insurance industry at that point started investing heavily in pulling together all that information towards development of innovative risk models that could help it better understand where the risks are, how the risks play in the portfolio of contracts and that they were underwriting. And today we have the privilege of really engaging this industry and its expertise with the scientific community and the government to bring another level of technological advancement in science together with data from the governments to start really pushing forward on much better understanding of climate risks. The impact of extreme event and climate is really felt across all stakeholders across the society, from governments to businesses and to individuals. Studies from OECD, World Bank Group, and a number of very credible centers is indicating that societies in which insurance has penetrated effectively and deeply recover much better and much faster from impacts of disasters. So what is that? Well, the reason for that is insurance brings a number of different elements to the table. The first one is the knowledge of risk, which always reflects in the price of the insurance. So when you look at the price of the insurance, if it's too high, it's a direct reflection that the risks are very high. And that is a great signal to the stakeholders to the point that they really need to work on reducing that risk. Now, beyond that, in a comprehensive program of risk management that should include prevention and insurance can really help in transferring the financial risk beyond just that person and that locality across, and really help reduce the overall impacts, lower financial impacts. But then, in terms of when an event happens, when a disaster happens, the ability of insurance to transfer the funds more effectively, efficiently, and in a much more timely manner to the stakeholders really enables them to get off their feet and start building back much faster and much more efficiently. So these, together with the knowledge of insurance industry on resilience of infrastructure, resilience of buildings, and close collaboration of industry with the governments and other stakeholders can really help us think a lot more systematically and effectively as to how we can reduce the financial risk. I can maybe formulate that around three themes. The first theme was that there is clear evidence that financial impacts of extreme event and climates are on the rise. Now, with that said, the protection gap is also widening in both developed and developing countries. In developed countries, protection is around 30%, whereas in developing countries it's only 1%, and that is widening. The second point is there has been significant progress in really bringing and demonstrating the importance of insurance at the international, regional, and national levels. And how that has resonated itself is when you look at the international framework agreements, such as Sendai Framework for Agreement in Disaster Risk Reduction, or the outcomes of COP21, you will see that role of insurance is explicitly indicated as a critical tool as part of a comprehensive risk management strategy. What that means is the signatories to these framework agreements, being the governments, are agreeing that they need insurance, they need to expand insurance as a critical element of their risk management strategies. Similarly, these discussions are also penetrating in regional discussions of socioeconomic groupings like APEC and ASEAN and so on, as well as it's definitely part of the national and local debates. Now, with that said, really for us to work together to help penetrate insurance, we have a lot of work ahead of us. And I would say there are 4 hurdles that we need to work together. The first one is creation of enabling environments, from policy to legislative, regulatory, as well as development of viable financial systems that lend themselves to penetration of insurance. Second one, very importantly, as we've also discussed, is risk information, ability to access hazard, exposure, and vulnerability information, and then be able to translate that into a price so that we understand what the level of risk is. The third element is the innovation that's needed through close cooperation of the industry with the governments, again, national to local, to create innovative solutions. Insurance products that really meets the needs of the different communities and the different purposes they have to serve. And with that said, I know that there is a lot of work ahead, but yet I am very encouraged by the movements, by level of discussion, by the engagement of all the different stakeholders that are playing a critical role in different pieces of this puzzle. And I'm ever so encouraged that we are on the right track.